Fox 5 and Hot 97 present Street Soldiers with Lisa Evers.
I'm so glad you're joining us for this episode of Street Soldiers on AI and education. I'm your host, Lisa Evers. There are new AI developments coming nearly every single day. Now, educators and tech leaders are coming together to design ways to use AI to enhance learning at every stage of life. Teachers and professors at all levels of education are faced with the challenge of how to use AI to enhance the learning experience. But that requires training. Meeting that need is job number one for Corey Crouch, Chief Program Officer at the company AI for Education.
The greatest need that we see right now is training, is space and time for educators and leaders and parents to really dig in and understand what is generative AI, what are the capabilities and opportunities, and what are the limitations.
Rob Kissner is a clinical lecturer at Iona University and one of 4 leaders who is working to set some literacy guidelines and guardrails for AI use on campus. He says attitudes about AI range from fear and skepticism to enthusiasm.
As a university, I'm really proud of the fact that we're creating time and space for AI literacy and educating the faculty what this really means and thinking about how it's going to impact their teaching. And also, it's impacting the students.
Prominent Columbia University educator Dr. Christopher Emden says AI is forcing teachers and professors to focus on the process of learning rather than rote memorization of facts. It's something he knows very well, having used hip-hop music to improve science scores at a Bronx school. He says it's natural for parents to be afraid of AI.
If it's introduced like a tool for us all to use, then young folks learn to use it productively. So I would say to parents, don't think of it as the enemy. Don't think about if your kids use this and they'll never learn how to write. Say, let's use this tool to help you write better.
Let's get into this now with our panel. Joining me is Corey Crouch. He is the Chief Program Officer at AI for Education. It's a global company based here in the U.S., and we're going to find out all about that from her. Corey, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks so much for having me.
We really appreciate it. Also with us is Rob Kissner. He's an MBA. He's a clinical lecturer at Iona University. And Rob is one of 4 individuals, fellows, who has helped the university to develop and navigate through this whole new AI terrain. Rob, thank you so much for being with us.
I'm so glad to be here today.
We really appreciate it. Also with us once again, Dr. Christopher Emden. He is with Columbia University Teachers College. You know him from Street Soldiers' previous shows as the founder of the Science Bowl, of Hip Hop Ed, and many other innovations. He has been elevated, if that's possible, to the Maxine Green Chair for Distinguished Contributions to Education. And he also is the director of the STEAM Dream Idea Lab, and we're going to find out about that as well. Chris, thank you so much for joining us.
Always glad to be here with you.
Chris, I want to start with you on this. How do you see what's happening with AI and the way people are being educated now?
I mean, AI is the most, I would argue, significant technological advancement of the last decade. It is a powerful tool that folks are still kind of figuring out where it's going to go. I'm really excited about the possibilities. I think there's much change that has to happen in education to sort of catch up to AI. But we're at a point now where we know we're not going backwards. And our responsibility as educators, as parents, as community members, is to have a handle of this thing and find ways that we can use it to enhance the learning of our babies.
Do you think it really can enhance the learning and the capabilities of kids?
Absolutely. If you think of AI as just the end of what you're doing in education, then you're lost already. If you look at it as just a way to get an answer to a question, you've lost. But if you look at it as a tool that can enhance teaching, enhance lesson planning, disrupt how we assess information, help young folks have opportunities to engage in dialogue and see themselves as equal partners with a digital tool, and also as a repository of information, then we're on the cusp of something really magical. But it requires us to be able to use it as a tool, not an answer.
And not have it use us, right?
Exactly.
Okay. Corey, tell us about what AI for Education, what your company does. Give us a sense of that, please.
Sure. So at AI for Education, we work with schools and educational institutions, like you said, really around the world to build AI literacy and really wrap leaders and educators and students' heads around exactly what Chris was just saying. How do we understand what this technology is? What the capabilities and limitations and risks of it are, and how can we leverage it to really enhance and augment the learning and creativity and possibilities and innovations in education and for our young people, and but do that in a way where we're aware of the risks and things that we have to safeguard against. So we do workshops to build AI literacy, we do design processes, we also help schools and districts develop policy and guidelines so that they really start to go on this AI integration journey in a way that they feel is safe, ethical, and responsible for their students.
Rob Kissner at Iona University, tell us what some of the concerns are, because just to be perfectly honest, perfectly blunt here, the general public is like they're hearing about people getting caught, quote unquote, cheating because they're plagiarizing off AI. They're having AI write term papers, business proposals, all of these types of things. But in terms of the university, give us a sense of what you've been concerned with and what you've been working on.
Yeah, I mean, as we talked about, plagiarism, academic integrity, loss of agency, and critical thinking are all some of the major issues when we think about AI in education, or AI in the world for that matter. But I think to face that, one of the things I've been really proud of being a part of the Heinz Institute for Entrepreneurship and Innovation at Iona and at the university as a whole is, a lot of universities kind of pretended that it didn't exist for a little while, and Iona sort of embraced this from the beginning. We started incorporating this in our teaching in the fall of 2022, and GPT 3.5 was released. And, we've really addressed it head on. We've, engaged faculty all over the campus to get together and talk about what's working and what's not working. And it's been a really great collective effort across campus to really think about what this means for education. And quite frankly, we're going to need to change the way that we teach. If a student can take the easy way and write a paper with AI and they do it because they're pressed for time and they're stressed out, like, of course they're going to take the easy way. I don't blame them. And so we really can't assign papers the same way, right? We need to really change the way that we're assigning work, the way that we're assessing work, and taking the emphasis off of those sort of products, those transactions at the end, and really focusing more on process.
Don't go away. We'll be right back.
No matter what the tool is that's being used, it is the responsibility of parents and educators to offer balance.
Corey, what are some of the main issues that keep coming up for you? Let's talk about at the elementary school level with AI.
Oh, yes. Okay, main issues. I will try to make this brief. Well, let's first start with the fact that we still have so much to learn research-wise about the impact of the use of things like AI on cognitive development. And we've been integrating technology into education for decades now, but even recently you did a show on social media and addiction, and some of what we're learning about the impact on neural development of the technology. And we don't know what those impacts are yet. And so, especially at the elementary level, but this is true for all of our learners, being aware of the risks of hallucinations and misinformation that AI is susceptible to, biased information, data privacy and security, and even more so, young learners understanding what's human and what's not human, and doing the thinking and cognitive development for themselves before they're leveraging a tool like generative AI to do the thinking for them. So we have to be very careful with use of these tools under the age of 13, but it really is true for all learners across the board.
I'm so glad you said this, Corey, because you talked about cognitive development and neuroscience. Yep. And how we don't quite know yet the implications of these tools. But there's certain things that we always know when we talk about cognitive development and we talk about the effect of the brain on young folks. And what we do know is that the use of any tool or external device as a sole mechanism through which they engage or learn is problematic. So if a young person is only reading and reading all the time and not outside playing with their friends, even reading can have negative implications. If a young person is using 90% of their time on social media and not engaging in person, that'll have negative implications. Much the same with AI. If they're using AI as the chief means through which they are engaging with each other or content, we know it'll have negative implications. So what am I saying? I'm saying that no matter what the tool is that's being used, it is the responsibility of parents and educators to offer balance. So it's really about learning how we create an ecosystem for young folks where there's equal time spent on new tools and age-old practices that we always know work towards learning.
And Chris, I want to double down on something you just said, which is, if we're using AI as the sole mechanism for learning, that's problematic in all of the points that you just laid out, but even more so, AI tools are not designed for education, they're designed for work. They're designed to get you to the end result as quickly as possible. And it's meant to make work frictionless. And education is about friction. Education is about that grind and working through the hard stuff. So if we use AI as the sole means for teaching our students, we're taking all of the real learning out of the process and just having them generate basically C quality papers instead of actually developing the ability to think, form their own opinions, take responsibility of what they're putting out, take agency over what they're learning, and be able to express themselves.
But Corey, what about in terms of girls versus boys? Are there different adaptations?
There was a study maybe about a year ago where it wasn't specific to education. It was actually across different industries where they were measuring male versus female use of ChatGPT and other AI tools in their work. And there was about a 20% differential overall, and then a larger differential in some industries, including in education, where males were more likely to be using the tools than females. It does also point back to a lot of what we advocate for is really creating the space and time for that training and exploration and building AI literacy for leaders in education, educators, parents and caregivers, and then of course students. But we know that we need to make the space and time to be having those conversations and to be building an understanding of the technology, regardless of what tool you're using.
Chris, is this like a natural thing? Because, so many kids now grown up with, the iPads and the video games and are much more comfortable with that. Does that make them more readily, is it easier for them to adapt to this?
Well, then, the tools are readily accessible. I mean, any iPhone now, it comes with an AI tool in the device. So they're in many ways becoming digital natives, and it's a piece of their identity. We have to be able to train young folks to not just use the device and get answers, but rather start training the devices around their own specific interests to get goals that align to their gender interests, to their academic interests, or otherwise.
We're back after this.
Until we take the time to understand how the tools function, how they're trained, are aware of the biases, are aware of how they exacerbate our own confirmation bias in the way that we write prompts, it's not a level playing field.
Chris, do you have any concerns about AI that maybe it's going to be more accessible to one group, or like Corey was talking about earlier, that there's certain biases or certain preconceptions or just things based on people's limited experience that are part of it?
AI, like any digital tool, can either replicate or transform existing divides, right? We know that more resource school districts have adopted AI at an exponentially higher rate than low resource school districts. Why? Because the teachers in those districts are more fearful. They're less likely to be trained in these devices. They've not had conversations with Corey or organizations like hers. And so they don't have the AI literacy. So they're less likely to adopt these tools. Now, I've been working with a couple of schools in New York City on an approach called prompt pedagogy. And the idea behind prompt pedagogy is simply teaching teachers to know how to ask the right questions to the AI tool so you can get the right responses. And then when you get those responses, how do you enhance the response as not just the final answer, but how do you edit, revise, enhance, and ask questions back? And so when you have low resource folks, where the normal teaching is sit down, be quiet, you're not teaching young people how to question. And now we have these tools that in order to be able to use them effectively, you've got to question. In the words of Public Enemy, you can't trust it. AI does the work first, but but then I have to do the work afterwards.
Rob, what about that? As you're devising these policies, can you give us an example of one maybe that you found is help kind of like putting the guardrails on this whole thing?
Well, I want to actually quickly get back to the equity issue, because this is one thing I don't want to miss, which is, all the points that Chris said, I'm totally on board with. The other thing is there's still a digital divide. There's still people that don't have access to high-speed internet. And so, how can we say that this levels the playing field if people can't even use the tools? Number one. And number two, to Corey's point, AI literacy. If everybody has access to the tools, that's great. But if the school districts that are better resourced are getting their teachers trained on AI literacy, then there's a huge divide there, because until we take the time to understand how the tools function, how they're trained, are aware of the biases, are aware of how they exacerbate our own confirmation bias in the way that we write prompts, is not a level playing field.
Yo, and I gotta say this is really important. This is also why it's important for particular populations to be able to use and feed the tools.
Yes.
Algorithmic bias is a real thing.
100%.
If only folks who are from a certain perspective and background are the ones who are uploading the information that's feeding the answers that come from the machine, then the biases are going to be reinforced.
Chris, and the work that I've done it has been with communities like yours and as a teacher and a school leader. And what I would say even more so is that we have a responsibility to empower the young people and the learners and the students to be a part of those that are developing this technology and designing the technology, as well as navigating the regulations and the policies and the other components of the ecosystem that have impact on what the technology looks like, who it represents, who has access to it, and let's really empower those young people to be a part of the development of the tools and technology going forward. And part of that boils down to, in a lot of ways, of ensuring that our educational system is more equitable, regardless of your zip code and the color of your skin.
Rob, what about the verification? Like when you're teaching your business classes, like how do you say it? Like the AI saying, "Oh, this is the most profitable," or "This company made $80 billion in 6 weeks," or whatever is the claim. How do you get that in the process? The verification.
So it comes down to teaching students responsibility over the information they take in, and responsibility for how they represent themselves with the information they put out in the world. And so we teach some basic techniques, like I said, use Perplexity to do some research. Perplexity makes it pretty easy to verify the sources, but we teach something called lateral reading. So if ChatGPT spits out a statistic or a piece of data, highlight it, open a new tab laterally, drop it in Google and see what comes up. If it's a real article, it'll be the first hit. If it's a fake article, it won't show up at all. So there's some really easy techniques that we have to teach our students. First, we have to show students that AI gets things wrong and makes things up. We need to show them concrete examples, number one. And two, just show them really easy, frictionless ways to fact check so they can take responsibility over what they take in and what they put out. And that's going to be constantly evolving. With GPT-5 for ChatGPT, they say that it hallucinates less. I don't trust it. I don't trust anything that comes out of AI. And we want our students to have that same mindset that basically they're being lied to all the time. They have to fact check everything, right? But in all seriousness, the tools are going to change. The way we interact with the tools are going to change. So just staying up on these easy techniques to have students take responsibility over the information that they're representing themselves with, that they put out in the world, is going to be super important.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
And it builds on media literacy and being critical consumers of information that's out there already, verifying the resources and knowing where's this resource coming from. Even if it's real, there's still that component that I was a high school English teacher, so I've been teaching, let's talk about opinion and bias and whose perspective is this, and how do we expand our understanding of the different perspectives that are out there. So yes, make sure it's real, but also let's tap into some of that critical analysis that hopefully we've been teaching since before ChatGPT too.
Dr. Christopher Emden, in terms of what this can do, what is your visionary, what's your vision of what AI can really do to make all of our lives better and our country?
I envision AI being a piece of what we do in education. I envision a world where we have AI classes, where prompt pedagogy is a course just like English or math or science or social studies. And I want to leave you with a quote, one of my favorite quotes by Alvin Toffler. And it says, "The illiterate of the future are not those who can't read or write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. What we're having with AI is simply a moment. There'll be more advanced tools next week and the week after that. So the minute you get comfortable with something and you've learned it, you have to learn to just offload that and relearn a new one. The chief tool for success in any endeavor is to be able to be nimble enough to adjust yourself to the new context to allow you to be successful in meeting your goals.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Street Soldiers on AI and education. You can watch it again and share it on our Fox 5 NY YouTube page and the Fox Local app. Remember, use your mind as your best weapon. I'm Lisa Evers. Let's push for peace, love, and justice for all.